Market to Market is everywhere you are. Subscribe to Market on YouTube, find us on the PBS video app to stream on demand, and add our 3 podcasts on your favorite podcasting app.
Last week, a bill to increase price transparency between packers and cattle producers made its way out of the Senate Agriculture Committee. Many outside the Beltway with mud on their boots are concerned about the unintended effect this measure might have on the cattle industry. As part of the MTOM podcast, I spoke with one of those cattlemen who built his independent feedlot with his brother and sees the legislation as a major threat to his way of life. A short segment of that conversation is this week's cover story.
About the nature of our business, because our business is something that in Congress they were saying no longer exists. But we determined a long time ago when we were in our early 30s that somebody was going to tell our story as cattlemen, but specifically feed yard operators. And I guess we were just bold enough to say, well, we'll tell it ourselves and make sure it's right. And so we've been willing to be in the public eye for a long time. But then last fall, I was asked to serve as president-elect of the Kansas Livestock Association. I don't think it was accidental that I was asked to go to DC. I think the nature of my business, being an independent custom finishing feedlot, was part of that story. But then it wasn't foreign for me to sit in front of a bunch of people and get asked hard questions. We do that all the time. I've had people from the World Wildlife Fund at our operation, farmers and ranchers and veterinarians and chefs from all over the world that sometimes don't have an understanding of what a CAFO is. And so I don't mind being in a situation where I'm going to get asked the tough questions and have to defend them.
I want to go all the way back to the very first thing you said. You were told in the hearing that your type of business doesn't exist anymore. Is that the independent feeding operation? Is that what you meant with that?
Yep. So, both for sure, Senator Grassley alluded to the fact that there's no independent feedlots anymore. Mr. Ruffin, who is a rancher and an attorney in Missouri, who testified along with me, and then Miss Shelley Zeesh out of North Dakota, who testified along with me, basically said there's no such thing as independent feedlots anymore. It's all corporate, which I'm not going to deny. There's a lot of corporate feed yards out there that own all their cattle, but they have to get those cattle somewhere. And that's farmers and ranchers from across the U.S. But my business, we are exclusively custom. So my brother and I started with nothing. We literally bought a feedlot with a handshake as our down payment and collateral. And one of our loan covenants was, you're not going to own cattle. We had way too much risk and were highly leveraged to begin with. And our bankers said, cattle ownership is not going to be a part of our deal.
Is there going to be a perfect bill, or should we just let this thing be?
Well, I don't believe there's going to be a perfect bill. And frankly, I don't believe that government regulation is better in many cases. I believe the private sector can sort things out. There's a lot of things that myself, Kansas Livestock Association, NCBA, National Cattlemen's Beef Association are not opposed to. Widening the reporting regions for LMR, that's a good thing to get more data. The cattle contract library, as long as it's done with confidentiality, that could be a good thing. The special investigator bill, that I would argue the authority to make sure that the packers and stockyards is followed already exists, and duplicating or creating another agency, for one, adds to levels of bureaucracy. It does confuse who has jurisdiction. And frankly, if you ask me, it's an admission on behalf of Congress that they haven't been enforcing the laws that were already in place to begin with. The biggest thing that I'm opposed to, and frankly, NCBA and KLA, is the mandate, just because who gets to choose is the packer, which gives them more leverage. And I've got friends that do manage large corporate yards. And matter of fact, the CEO of one large yard, actually a collection of yards, told me months ago he said, listen, if I'm sitting in the sale barn buying cattle to fill our yards, which those larger yards are doing every single day of the year, he said, if I don't know how I get to market those calves the day I buy them, my risk just went up, which means my price just went down. What I can stick my neck out for, because even the corporate yards, they're not making very big margins. The way a feed yard works is to capture very, very thin margins across a large population of cattle. But if all of a sudden there's some hiccup, like you can't market them the way you thought you were going to, and that thin margin goes away, well, guess what? Your profitability just evaporated.
So you think things are cyclical? Because, I mean, we look at packer margin and go, boy, that looks pretty good right now. Is that going to stay this way forever? Do you think that's what Congress is trying to tackle?
Well, I know things are cyclical, which is why we have this conversation about once every 10 years. And that's because, there's an old saying that the American farmer can ruin a bull market in 1 year. Wheat gets high. Guess what? Everybody's going to raise wheat next year and the price goes down. That kind of goes hand in hand with the old saying, the cure for high prices is high prices. And cattlemen are no different. It just takes us longer.
The full conversation with Shawn Tiffany is available now on the Market to Market YouTube channel. New episodes of the MTOM podcast come out each Tuesday.